Hello friends and fellow MCU fans, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me for another video where today we are talking about the newest MCU film to hit theaters, The Eternals. This one is directed by Chloe Zhao and stars a very talented cast consisting of Gemma Chan, Angelina Jolie, Leah McHugh, Richard Madden, Salma Hayek, Kumail Nanjiani, Brian Tyree Henry, Barry Keoghan, and Ma Dong-seok as ancient immortal beings known as the Eternals, who have been forbidden to interfere with human events throughout human history throughout their many centuries spent on Earth. But when a greater threat threatens the planet that the Eternals have come to know as home, they must fight to protect the human race they now live among. Alright, so if you have been keeping up with the Eternals news that's kind of going on in social media right now, the big narrative around this movie right now is how after 25 movies in a row, this is the first Marvel Cinematic Universe movie that has a rotten critic score on the site Rotten Tomatoes. If a critic doesn't like this movie and wants to give it a negative review, they have every right to do so. But the fact that this is the first rotten scored Marvel movie has a lot of eyes on this movie, people wondering, how bad could this movie possibly be? And right off the bat, I would say personally for me, Eternals is not a bad movie. I think Eternals is a good movie, although I could see where some of the critics on Rotten Tomatoes are coming from giving it a negative review because I personally didn't love Eternals. So let's start unpacking this and let's just dive into the things that I thought really worked about Eternals. It's been well known to people keeping up with this movie that Chloe Zhao really wanted to shoot this movie on location. She didn't want to stay in a soundstage and be surrounded by green screen. She wanted to get out into environments. And that decision is a huge thumbs up for me for Eternals, because Eternals is a story taking place across centuries of human history. So going to these tangible environments, these real places, really helps to set the movie in the centuries and decades that it's trying to go for. And it gives this movie a unique look that stands out among all the other Marvel movies. This movie looks absolutely gorgeous. It's big in scale and scope, and the landmarks that Chloe Zhao is able to capture throughout this movie, they look really beautiful, and it helps this movie achieve the sense of epicness that it's going for. The action is also on par with the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The action in this movie is a lot of fun, and the Eternals, all of their powers really get utilized throughout these action scenes. You see how they work together, you see how they each contribute their power, and watching the Eternals fight together is very kinetic, very energetic, and very entertaining. The movie also takes some twists and turns and reveals that I honestly didn't see coming and were legitimate shocks to me that helped to keep me a little bit more engaged throughout this movie. Because while I did enjoy the Eternals, it's not one of my favorite Marvel movies. It's down on the lower tier for me of Marvel films, and a lot of that has to do with the Eternals themselves. There are members of the Eternals that I liked and I thought really stood out. The show stealer for me was Kumail Nanjiani, because he just brought his natural comedic talents to the group of the Eternals, and he's one of the more fun members within the Eternals group. Along with Brian Tyree Henry, I really enjoyed his character as well. The rest of the Eternals, though, I felt they could be a little bit dry. And that's where basically my biggest problem with the Eternals comes from. And it's not even that the characters within the Eternals group are dry in the normal movie character sense. Like, I wouldn't say any of them were that boring, but compared to other Marvel heroes, they stand out because they're not really the quippy, comedic, kind of fun characters that you're used to seeing in a Marvel movie. Chloe Zhao really focuses on the drama within the Eternals group. The Eternals is almost what I would call Marvel's first dramatic movie. I found there was very little comedy in this movie, especially for an MCU film, and while there is action, the action can be kind of sparse and far and few in between. For the majority of the movie, Chloe Zhao really wants to look into these characters. There's a lot of discussion between the Eternals themselves of should they even save humanity? Is humanity worth saving? And while I found the concepts and the ideas that Chloe Zhao was trying to bring out of these characters pretty interesting, I never really felt like she dove deep enough into them to focus so much time on them, and it makes the Eternals kind of feel like an unfun group. You know, like I liked certain members on their own, but for the majority of the Eternals, I didn't really feel like I could get attached to any of them because there was always tension between them, and while each one of them had a connection that was very specific to one another, I just found that for the majority of the movie, they mostly just argue and bicker with each other, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I didn't really have fun with them while they were doing it. I will also say that this is almost the MCU's first slow burn kind of movie. This movie is 2.5 hours long, and a large majority of this movie is long takes of people standing around this beautiful environment, talking, and dealing with the heavy issues that come from being immortal creatures living on a mortal world. And I do want to stress that I don't necessarily find these bad things. They're just things that you're not used to finding in Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. And while I do encourage Marvel and applaud Marvel for being creative and taking a different route with this movie and their movies in Phase 4 in general, even the TV shows on Disney+, Marvel has really taken Phase 4 and it is unlike any other phase that they have done. And I really enjoy that and I applaud them for that. But I would be lying if I didn't say that this is one of my least rewatchable MCU movies. The movie is also really heavy with exposition and a lot of lore and mythology dumped on you. In my Shang-Chi review, I said that was unlike any other Marvel movie in the cinematic universe. It had so much lore and mythology thrown at you. I spoke way too soon because Eternals has definitely outdone Shang-Chi in that way. And if you're not paying attention the whole time, man, it can be very easy to get lost in that information. As I said at the top of this review, despite some of these personal issues, I had a good time with Eternals. Am I surprised that it's the first Marvel Cinematic Universe movie that's gotten a rotten score from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes? Actually, a little bit, but not entirely. Because I think Marvel is in this place right now where after Endgame, they have to prove that there's more story to tell, that there's more things to come back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe for now that Iron Man and Captain America are gone. And they're throwing everything they have at you for Phase 4. And I think some of it's really going to work for people, and some people are just going to be like, this is too far, it's just too far beyond my reach. I know my own grandparents have kind of jumped off the Marvel Cinematic Universe boat. They had a hard time getting past Loki. So if you're a huge Marvel Cinematic Universe fan like I am, and you just have to see everything that they put out, I recommend Eternals. Go check it out. I think you'll end up enjoying it, even if you don't enjoy the whole thing overall. But if you're kind of more like, I enjoy some things in the MCU, I can wait until I catch it on Netflix, then just wait for Eternals to come out. I don't think it's one you have to rush out to see. I will say it's going to be very interesting to see how the Eternals works with the greater MCU, with all the other characters. It's going to be interesting to see these group of characters interact with characters like Spider-Man and Ant-Man and Shang-Chi. I can't see Angelina Jolie's Thena bouncing off quips with Tom Holland's Peter Parker. At least not yet. Anyways, that's where I land with the new Marvel's Eternals. But what do you guys think of this movie? Comment down below, let me know. I want to know all your thoughts and opinions about this movie. As always, you guys, thank you so much for clicking on this video and checking out my channel. If you enjoyed this video and you like talking TV, movies, and all things entertainment, why don't you go on and click that subscribe button, click that like button, click that notification bell, all that YouTube stuff. And I hope to talk to you guys again real soon.